everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss about semantic segmentation. So we are trying to get an overview of semantic image segmentation. We have never heard this word before, right? So this word is actually new to us. And by the end of this lecture, you will come to know what semantic segmentation is. What is semantic segmentation and what kind of background knowledge is required to understand that. Okay, so this is what we are going to see in this lecture. So now let us try to understand what is image segmentation. Image segmentation is the task of partitioning an image into multiple segments. This makes it a whole lot easier to analyze the given image. So how can I understand this better? So it is a computer vision task in which we label specific regions of an image according to what is shown. So basically what we try to do over here is what is in this image and where is this image is located. So I'll show you some pictures and I'll make you to understand what is that. So basically what we try to do here, like we try to group pixels together on the basis of specific characteristics. So these characteristics can often lead to different types of image segmentation, which can be further divided as semantic segmentation and instance segmentation. So if I tell more specifically, the goal of semantic image segmentation is to label each pixel of an image with a corresponding class of what is being represented. Because we are predicting for every pixel in the image, this task is commonly referred to as dense prediction. So now let us look into this picture. So what do you observe in this picture? You can see a building. There are some windows. There is a door over here. And there is a car, pavement road, vegetation. Can you see all this? See, there are multiple windows, but you could see that only one window, right? So you should try to understand the difference between the image classification and the segmentation. So what are we trying to do over here? We are assigning a class to every pixel in a given image. So we are linking each pixel in an image to a class label. This is basically called as semantic segmentation. So the label could be like a cat, flower, lion. In this picture, it is like building, window, door, car, pavement road, vegetation, sky, right? So now look at all these labels in deep. You can see that everything is marked in different color. Can you see that? All the windows are represented as blue, and this vegetation, wherever you could see the trees, that is in green, and the sky almost in blue, and then window color and the sky color is different, and then the car color is completely different from that. So what do we try to understand over here? In semantic segmentation, every pixel of the image is associated with a certain class label, right? So we have to try to understand it a little more, right? One important thing what we have to notice here is that we are not separating instances of the same class. We only care about the category of each pixel. Say, for example, if you have two objects of same category in your input image, the segmentation map does not inherently distinguish these are separate objects, right? So that is a different class of model known as instance segmentation model, which distinguish between separate objects of the same class, right? So the segmentation models are useful for a variety of tasks like self-driving vehicles. So if you do a segmentation for the self-driving vehicles, you can see that like a car, and there's a truck over there, and there you could see some vehicles, and then some are marked in green color, could be trees, or there are signal lamps. And so if you look into this, like you can see three features, right? I mean, three colors, right? So this is how it is different. And these rely heavily on such segmented images to navigate through roads. So we need to equip cars with the necessary perception to understand their environment so that self-driving cars can safely integrate into our existing roads. So just imagine that we are using autonomous vehicles, and then definitely it should be able to do all these labeling, right? Say, for example, it should identify where the posts are, where the traffic lamps are, or if there are any vehicles over there. So it is necessary to understand the environment so that the self-driving cars can safely integrate into our existing roads. Now look at this picture, like it is medical image diagnostics. It is also playing a major role in a medical field. Like a machines can augment analysis, and it can be performed by radiologists, and it greatly reduces the time required to run some diagnostic tests, right? And another application is that portrait mode on Google's Pixel phone. So instead of multiple classes, we have to classify every pixel as either belonging to the foreground or the background, and then blurring the background part of the image. And in photography, like again separating foregrounds and backgrounds in photo and video editing. And then robots. It developed robots that can move and interact objects within their environment. So semantic segmentation is very much helpful in the field of AI. Now let us more dive deep into instant segmentation. Look at picture 1 and picture 2. What is the difference basically we observe over here? In picture 1, see there are 5 persons. It is tagging, it is labeling it as a person, and here you can see only 2 colors, person and also the background. Am I clear? Right? So if you look into this, you can see that there are 5 persons. So it's labeling like person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4, and person 5. So the different instances of the same class are segmented individually in instant segmentation. So the segments are instance aware. Now let us look into these 3 pictures. The first one is about object detection. The second one is semantic segmentation. Third one is instant segmentation. So in object detection, you can see a bounding box. Can you see that there are several bounding boxes? So it's identifying persons. And if you look into this here, there is a boat, dining table, and flowers, right? So cutlery, so it can detect, right? So it is in object detection task, it is identifying all the 6 people and give them a single label of person by creating bounding boxes around them. In semantic segmentation, it goes further and it creates a mask over each person that was identified. It is identifying all the 6 persons and gives all of them a single label of person. In instant segmentation, every instance a person gets its own label, as we have seen before. Person 1, person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4, and so on. So now let us dive deep into this little more. Right. Okay. So what are we trying to understand over here? So if you look into this is basically RGB color image. So RGB is represented as height into width into the number of channels. So it is 3 if it is an RGB image, and like if it is a grayscale image, right? If it is a grayscale image, what will happen now? Height into width into 1, right? So our goal is to take either a RGB image or a grayscale image and output a segmentation map. So where each label contains, or sorry, where each pixel contains a class label represented as an integer. So how do I understand it better? So let us look into this image now. So here there is a person with a bag or a purse, and there you can see some plants or grass, and then there is a sidewalk over here. There is building, right? Say for example, so these 5 we are going to consider now. So number 1 is person. So now if you look into this label, right? If you look into this label, you can understand that, right? Is it clear? So this one is nothing but the person. So now similarly, if you look into this three are nothing but plants and trees. And here in this place, you could see some 5 over here, right? 5 over here. What is that 5? Basically, you could see over here, right? And then you can see 4 over here, right? So you could see some 4 over here. That is nothing but this place, like that is nothing but the sidewalk, right? And then you can see 5 in this region. That is nothing but the building. Hope it is very clear to you, right? So like what I have taken is I have taken an image and I have created some semantic labels on it, right? So in reality, the segmentation label resolution should match this original input resolution. So like it is something similar to like how we treat standard categorical values. We will create our target. We do one hot encoding the class labels and create an output channel for each of the possible classes, right? So a prediction can be collapsed into a segmentation map by taking the argmax of each depthwise pixel vector, right? So we can now overlay a single channel of our target or prediction. We refer to this as a mask, which eliminates the region of an image where a specific class is present, right? Clear, right? So let us now try to understand this. Like we have a clear knowledge on convolution neural network, right? So whenever we do a neural network architecture, what do? We just stack a number of convolution layers with the same padding to preserve dimensions and output a final segmentation map, right? So we use convolution layers and finally we do this segmentation, right? So this directly learns a mapping from the input image, right, to its corresponding segmentation. So to its corresponding segmentation through the successive transformation of feature mappings. But it's quite computationally expensive to preserve the full resolution through the network. So for deep convolutional networks, earlier layers tend to learn low-level concepts, while later layers develop more high-level feature mappings. So to maintain that expressiveness, we typically need to increase the number of feature maps as we get deeper in the network. So like this didn't necessarily pose any problem for image classification, but we only care about what the image contains and not where it is located, right? So we could alleviate computational burden by downsampling our feature maps through pooling or strided convolutions without any consent, right? So for image segmentation, we would like our model to produce a full resolution semantic prediction. So now I have used a new term called downsampling. I'll explain it in the next slide, right? So the next, the popular approach, what we do for image segmentation model is encoder-decoder structure, where we downsample the spatial resolution of the input, developing lower resolution feature mappings, which learns to be highly efficient at discriminating between the classes, and the upsample the feature representation into a full resolution segmentation map, right? So let us now understand this encoder decoder method little more. So we all know that segment is a group of things that have similar characteristics. So in computer vision, the idea of segmentation is different. So if you look over here, you can see a person, here grass, tree, sky, here also there are persons, right? Right. So this is what we are going to understand, right? So the one of the most important approach in image segmentation is encoder decoder method. So the encoder has a set of layers that extract features from an image using filters. So the encoder is pre-trained in a task such as image classification, where it will find out the correlations from multiple images. Then this knowledge can then be transferred during the process of image segmentation. So the final output, which is a segmentation mask, it is generated by the decoder. So the decoder is made of layers where it tries to generate the final output. So the decoder also ensures that the generated mask bears resemblance to the pixel resolution of the input image. So now look into the picture. Here there is an input of RGB image. Here there is convolutional encoder decoder. You can see that blue is actually convolution plus batch normalization plus ReLU, and then these are all pooling, right? And then here the upsampling is done. We will discuss it shortly. And then there is softmax, so that output we are getting segmentation, right? So now let us try to understand upsampling, right? So upsampling and downsampling, actually we have come across these concepts in machine learning that's related to little different. So here we will try to understand what is this basically, right? Okay, so we all know that the computer understands things better in the numerical format, whether it has to do a mathematical calculation, work with multimedia, text, or signals. So these are represented in computer in the form of the numbers, right? So like always we get a question that how to resize the images. Like, so just understand, just think like how the images are stored on a computer. So the image is always broken into tiny elements called pixel, and each pixel represents one color. So in case if you take an image with a resolution 1024 by 798 pixel, then say this means that there are many color points in the matrix form, right? So let's start with understanding this downsampling and upsampling, right? So let us try to understand that. So first, let us try to understand upsampling. So first, let me teach about downsampling, then let's come to upsampling, right? So downsampling. So the name itself tells us that we have to downscale the image. So it makes the data of a more manageable size. It reduces the dimensionality of the data. So it enables in faster processing of the data. It reduces the storage size of the data. And there are many other uses of this technique depending upon the usage. So sometimes people confuse this with the concept of image compression, which is completely different. Okay. So here what we are trying to do is just we are shrinking the image. So what does that mean? That essentially means throwing away some of the non-essential information. So we can take a hint that we are going to discard some of the rows or columns from the image. So there are many algorithms for this downsampling, like mip-map, box sampling, and sync, right? So there are several algorithms on that. Now, let us try to understand what is upsampling. What does upsampling do, right? So again, from the name, we can say that it is completely opposite to downsampling. Here we may try to increase the number of rows or columns of the images. Number of rows or columns means nothing but the dimensions. So this can be used in many cases, like we use in GANs. GANs means generative adversarial network, where the intention is to construct an image out of random vector sample, mimicking an image from the ground truth or real distribution. So there are some others also, like improving the quality of the image and so on, right? So when downsampling, our intention was simple and clear, but with upsampling, it is not very simple. So we somehow need to increase the dimension of the image and fill in the gaps in the sense columns or rows. Suppose you want to upsample. So here you can also see that there are some examples of upsampling algorithms, or like bicubic spline interpolation and nearest neighbor interpolation, bilinear interpolation, generalized bicubic interpolation, right? So there are several algorithms, and let us try to understand this upsampling. See, look at this picture now. Look into this deeply. Definitely, you can understand that. Right, if we want to upsample this original image by a factor of 3, this means you need to add 2 more rows or columns for each row or column in the image using some logic. So one way could be like just you can repeat each column or row in the original image. Clear? So this red, if you see that it is 3 cross 3, black 3 cross 3, again yellow 3 cross 3, right? So if you do this way, you could observe the two images. The original image and the resulting image will look similar, quite similar, but to drive the point home, you have not created any new data. It is not a new data, right? So the duplicated rows and columns are completely redundant, and this method is useless, right? So it does not provide any new information. So a sensible approach to add the new columns will be to interpolate the new data between rows or columns, which provide a reasonably accurate intermediate value using some advanced mathematical procedures, right? So let us see the concept little more to make it more understandable, right? So let us try to understand this upsampling and downsampling in detail. Say, for example, it is a nearest neighbor, right? So as I told you, like there are many approaches that we can use to upsample the resolution of a feature map. But the pooling operations downsample the resolution by summarizing a local area with a single value, right? So let's try to understand, say, for example, I have this one, right? So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? In case if I do this nearest neighbor, so now the input is 2 cross 2. right? So the output is actually 4 cross 4, right? So the output is 4 cross 4. So what you can see here, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, right? So if you choose bed of nails approach, it could be the same input. It may give us the output. So if you use that bed of nails, and then what are we getting over here is like, so here we will get 1, this will be 2, this will be 3, this will be 4, and remaining all will be 0, right? Remaining all will be 0. I mean 0, it's 0, right? So 0, 0, 0. Clear with this now? Say in case if you go with the option of maximum pooling, what we may get over here, like we will get it as, right. So in case if we, let me take a new whiteboard now. Okay. So now look at this, like in case if we choose maximum pooling approach, say for example, like so say for example, if I choose this one, bear my drawings, okay, right? Second one. So let me explain this so that you'll be clear with all the concepts of upsampling and downsampling at least, right? So in case if I have numbers like no, say I have numbers like 1, 2, 6, 3. For example, if I have like this 2, 1, 1, 2, 7, 3, 2, 1, 4, 8. Say for example, if I use this max pooling approach, so what do we see over here? We will be looking into this, like which is the maximum, right? So out of this 1, 2, and 3, 5, which is the maximum? 5, right? So here 6, 3, 2, 1, which is the maximum? 6. 1, 2, 7, 3, which is the maximum? 7. 2, 1, 4, 8, which is the maximum? 8, right? So the rest of the network, what will happen now? So in case if we do, so in case if we do maximum unpooling, what will happen now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Say use positions from the pooling layer, right? So what I'm doing now, maximum unpooling, right? So what will happen now? Here it will become 0, 0, 0, right? 1. So here there is 2, right? So it is going to be like 2, 0, 0, 0, right? And then this is going to be like 0, 0, 3, 0, something like this, right? So 0, 0, 0, 4, right? So from input 2 cross 2, we are getting it to 4 cross 4, right? So like this thing you have to understand about like upsampling or downsampling, how is it being performed, right? So transpose convolutions are by far the most popular approach. They used to develop a learned upsampling, right? So what they do is like they take they take 2 cross 2, they take 2 cross 2 input, right? And then they use 3 cross 3 transpose convolution, 3 cross 3 transpose convolution, right? With a stride 2 and pad 1, right? Stride 2 and pad 1. And then, so let me show you like how it works basically, right? Say for example, this is the input, right? So 2 cross 2, this is the input. So now what will happen? This input gives weight for filter, right? This input gives weight for filter. Now see, they see that right? So here Right. Look into this one. So what will happen now? Say for example, so what will happen now when you say stride 2 and pad 1? This is how it will work, right? So from here to here, right? Not this one, right? So when you do stride 2, 3 cross 3 transpose convolution stride 2 and pad 1, so this is what will happen now. Now this one, hope it is clear, right? So what is happening here? Here it gives the somewhere output overlaps. So the filter moves 2 pixels in the output for every 1 pixel in the input. So the stride gives us the ratio between the movement in output and the input, right? So when you talk about typical convolution operation, it will take the dot product of the values currently in the filter's view, and it produces a single value for the corresponding output position. Transpose convolution does the opposite. So in a transpose convolution, we take a single value from the low resolution feature map, multiply all of the weights in our filter by this value, projecting those weighted values into the output of the feature maps. So what we do over here, say for example, I have an input, say A and B, and I have filters like X, Y, Z, right? So what will be the output now? Like the output is going to be AX, AY, and AZ, right? AX, AY, and AZ. Similarly, I will get it like BX, BY, and BZ, right? So what's happening here? This is basically, right? So let me show it very clear, right? So let me make it very clear to you. So here this will get added also, right? So that also we have to mention over here. Say, I hope this is clear. Just I'm showing like how it works, right? So what's happening here, like in convolution operation, like we take the dot product of the values in the filter, and we produce a single value for the corresponding output position. And a transpose convolution, just the opposite. What it does is it take a single value from the low resolution feature map and multiply all the weights in the filter by this value, and it projects those weighted values to the output. So for filter sizes which produce an overlap in the output feature map, say 3 cross 3 filter with a stride 2, the overlapping values are simply added together. So here this tends to produce a checkerboard artifact in the output, and it is actually not desirable. So it is always best to ensure that your filter size does not produce an overlap, right? So that we have to be very much careful with, right? So like here we use convolutional networks are being used. The approach fully convolutional network is actually trained end to end, pixels to pixels, for the task of image segmentation. We have seen that it was introduced by Long et al. And they proposed that adapting existing well-studied image classification networks like AlexNet to serve as the encoder module of the network, appending a decoder module with the transpose convolutional layers to upsample the coarse feature maps into a full resolution segmentation map, right? However, the encoder module reduces the resolution of the input by a factor of 32. The decoder module struggles to produce fine-grained segmentation. So the semantic segmentation faces an inherent tension between semantics and location, and global information resolves what, while local information resolves where combining fine layers and coarse layers lets a model make local predictions that respect global structures, right? So the skip connections are being added. So the authors address this tension by slowly upsampling the encoded representation, adding skip connections from earlier layers and summing those to feature maps. So these skip connections from earlier networks, say for example, we have an input, right? And then we have pool 1, pool 2, pool 3, pool 4, pool 5, right? So from this, what you can see is, right? So this, right. So now this pool 4, see this pool 4 is doing some prediction, right? Pool 4 prediction. Similarly, like you can see that here there is two crops upsampled prediction, right? Upsampled prediction. Clear? So here there is 2 cross upsampled prediction. So what will happen? This is from pool 5, right? And this is pool 4 prediction. And now these two are summed up, right? And it again leads to 2 cross unsampled prediction, right? And then from here we get again pool 3 prediction, right? So there is pool 3 prediction. Now these two will be summed up and it will lead to 8 cross upsampled, right? Upsampled prediction for FCN 8. Clear? Right? So what is upsampling over here? So this stage is upsampling, and similarly this stage is upsampling. So here we are getting output as 8 upsampled prediction FCNs, right? So here there are skip connections from the earlier layers in the network, like before this downsampling operation. It should provide the necessary details to reconstruct accurate shapes for segmentation boundaries. So we can also require fine-grained detail with the addition of these skip connections, right? So fully convolutional architecture primarily expands the capacity of the decoder module of the network. So more concretely, they propose unit architecture, which consists of a contracting path to capture context and a symmetric expanding path that enables precise localization, right? So this simpler architecture has grown to a very popular and adopted for a variety of segmentation process, right? So you can see this unit, right? So here the original architecture introduces a decrease in resolution because of the valid padding. So some practitioners opt to use same padding where the padding values are obtained by image reflection at the border. But Long et al., like in the FCN paper, they reported that the data augmentation did not result in a noticeable improvement in performance. Ronneberger et al. Said that it's a key concept for learning, and it appears as if the usefulness and data augmentation depends on the problem domain. So now let us have an overview on unit variant. So the standard unit model consists of a series of convolution operations for each block in the architecture. So there will be more advanced blocks that can be substituted in for stacked convolution layers. And they swap out the basic stacked convolution blocks in favor of residual blocks. So this residual block introduces short skip connections alongside the existing long skip connections found in the standard unit structure. So they report that the short skip connections allow for faster convergence when training, and it allows for deeper models to be trained. So they propose the use of dense blocks, and then still it follows unit structure, or giving that the characteristics of denseness make them a good fit for semantic segmentations, as they naturally induce skip connections and multi-scale supervision. So the dense blocks are useful as they carry low-level features from previous layers, and it directly alongside higher level features from more recent layers, allowing for highly efficient feature reuse. So one important aspect of this architecture is the fact that the upsampling path does not have a skip connection between input and output of a dense block. The authors note that because the upsampling path increases the feature map spatial resolution, the linear growth in the number of features would be too memory or demanding. So only the output of a dense block is passed along in the decoder module. Right. So a unit is a network whose training strategy relies on heavy use of data augmentation in order to use the annotated images efficiently. So the architecture is made up of a path that captures context and symmetric expanding path, which is to enable precise localization. So in this architecture, a fully connected convolution layer is modified to work on a few training images, yet yielding more accurate precision. So this is very important because the architecture was initially proposed for medical image processing, where a lots of training data is scarce. So this applies elastic transformation in order to achieve augmentation. So you can look over here, like there is convolution 3x3 ReLU, copy and crop, maximum, pool 2x2, app convolution 2x2, and convolution 1x1, right? Okay, so the benefit of downsampling a feature map is that it broadens the receptive field with respect to the input for the following filter given a constant filter size. So this is more desirable than increasing the filter size due to the parameter inefficiency of large filters. So what do the dilated convolutions do? It provide alternative approach towards gaining a wide field for of view while preserving the full spatial dimension, right? So some architectures swap out the last few pooling layers for dilated convolutions with successively higher dilation rate to maintain the same field of view while preventing loss of spatial detail, right? So here again, like if we have to define a loss function for this image segmentation, that is basically pixel wise cross entropy loss. So this examines each pixel individually. It compares the class predictions to our one hot encoded target vector, and it evaluates the class predictions for each pixel vector individually, and then it averages over all pixels, right? So we are essentially asserting equal learning to each pixel in the image. So sometimes this could become a problem if you have unbalanced representation in the image, because the training can be dominated by most prevalent class, right? So like uh, we this last weighting scheme helped unit model segment cells in biomedical images in a discontinuous fashion, such that the individual cells may be easily identified within binary segmentation map. So a loss weighting scheme for each pixel is such that there is a higher weight at the border of the segmented object. So there is another one popular loss function for image segmentation, that is Dice coefficient, which is essentially a measure of overlap between two samples. This could be ranging from 0 to 1. Where Dice coefficient of 1 means it is perfect and completely overlap. The Dice coefficient was originally developed for binary data, and it can be calculated as Dice is equal to, right? So what is this A intersection B? That represents the common elements between A and B, and A represents the number of elements in set A, and B represents the number of elements in set B. So to evaluate Dice coefficient on segmentation task, we can find out A intersection B, the element-wise multiplication between prediction and target mask, and then we can sum the resulting matrix. So our target mask is binary. So we effectively zero out any pixel from our prediction which are not activated in the target mask. So for the remaining pixels, we are penalizing low confidence predictions, higher value for this expression, right? So if we have to quantify A and B, some researchers use simple sum, whereas other researchers use squared sum for the calculation. So like again, it depends upon the scientist, like which approach is better that can be taken. So in case if you think that why there is a number 2 in the numerator in calculating Die's coefficient, because our denominator is double count the common elements between two sets. So in order to formulate a loss function which can be minimized, we will simply use one Die's, right? So this is called as soft Die's loss, because we directly use the predicted probabilities instead of thresholding and converting them into a binary mask. So with respect to a neural network output, the numerator is concerned with the common activations between our prediction and target mask. So the denominator is concerned with the quantity of activations in each mask separately. So this has the effect of normalizing our loss according to the size of the target mask. So the soft Die's loss does not struggle learning from classes with a lesser spatial representation in an image. So a soft Die's loss is calculated for each class separately and then average to get a final score, right? Oh, so this is the understanding, or this is the idea you should get to understand the segmentation, semantic segmentation process. So I think this is clear to you, right? So let us meet in the next session.